While we do our best to keep these shows fun and informative, during any discussion show you're going to sometimes hit on difficult topics. In this episode, we touch on issues of alcohol dependence and addiction.
This time on Watches of Tomorrow, we lose our shirt and put on shower curtains so we can party like it's the end of the world!
Hello, I am Gepwin, and I'm joined, as always, by Dr. Isix.
Hi!
Thought you were going to go with Party Like It's 1969.
Well, that's an option. Though, I guess, kind of going with the, some of the recent trends in the Twitch presents there with the Doctor Who, I could have said, it's time to party like it's London 1965. I've been enjoying that hilariously, so.
So, today we are covering The Naked Time.
The Naked Time.
Yes, which is it's widely considered as one of the classic episodes, kind of one of the ones everyone remembers from the original series.
Yeah, for a few reasons, perhaps.
Yeah,
we'll get into that.
It was actually nominated for a Hugo Award in 1967.
Nice. Didn't
win. Another Star Trek episode did win, but this one was only nominated.
There was not many Star Trek episodes of the original series that ended up winning, but several nominated, right?
Yeah, I think I've seen a few nominees, a couple, like one or two wins.
Like, why are they getting beat out by? Oh, gosh.
This episode was written by John D.F. Black.
Yes.
I believe this is his only writing credit on Star Trek.
The original series, I believe he's also involved in some Next Generation stuff.
Okay, so that trend again.
Yes, particularly an episode that's kind of like the sequel to this one, called The Naked Now.
Oh, did he write that one? I missed that.
Yep.
That makes sense.
He also wrote Justice, which is the episode where they went to the planet of all the pretty people, and they have like ridiculously insane laws, and there's like a superpowered alien protecting them who's like, I'm going to make you do all this stuff. You follow your own rules, and you can't break the primary directive this time, so ha!
Oh, yeah, that was a weird one. I hope we get to that eventually.
It's kind of one of those episodes that's like, okay, I kind of see what they're trying to do here, but it's also really awkward.
Yeah, very.
Also, can we just leave Wesley to his fate? Come on, please.
I like Wesley a lot more ever since Will Wheaton became a really cool person.
Yeah, same here, but it's sort of like, the time first seeing the episode's like, this is just painful, and I'm like a young person. Is this supposed to be appealing to me somehow? What?
Well, we get into our current version of that next season, so we can look forward to Chekhov.
Hooray! I prefer Chekhov, the actors in his role as Bestra on Babylon 5. But anywho.
Okay. Ooh, we get sidetracked easy today.
I know, right?
I blame the heat.
It's hot.
Yes.
So maybe it's time for some Naked Time.
This episode is guest starring Stuart Moss as Joe Tourmaline. I can't pronounce the last name, so I call him Joe. He's a junior grade lieutenant, I know that. Yes, lieutenant junior grade.
Which I think is like the only one in Star Trek.
Yep, you just took some of my interesting facts. And also Bruce Hyde as one of his first of two appearances as Riley. Riley, the Irishman, apparently. All right. Do we have anything else to get distracted by, or should I get into the synopsis?
Go for it.
Okay.
I'll stop. I'll be quiet for now.
Captain's log. Enterprise is orbiting Psi 2000. So far, it's the most interestingly named planet we've hit.
Yes.
A frozen wasteland that is about to collapse under its own gravitational pull. The mission is to pick up a science party that has been observing the breakup of the planet. Spock and the random crewman, Joe, beam down in red sparkly hazmat suits.
And when I first saw that, it's like, are they wrapped in bubble wrap?
Actually, they are in shower curtains.
Surprise!
As mentioned, Joe is the only lieutenant junior grade that we ever see aboard the Enterprise.
Which, given how things sort of turn out, maybe that's a good thing.
Well, maybe all of the other ones are. They die too fast to know.
It's like, well, we're going to give you this rank for a few hours. If you survive, you get automatically promoted because you're obviously not going to be, red-shirted out of here.
Yeah. What was that old Air Force thing for the Royal Air Force? The life expectancy was 6 minutes, so they called them like Sixers or something.
Yeah, it's like, yes, you'll only be up in the air for 6 minutes. Oh, well, yeah, that sounds great. I can go up 6 minutes a day and everything's great. No, that's because you get shot down.
Yep.
Just so frequently. It's like, yeah.
The research station that Spock and Joe have beamed down to is completely frozen, including a frozen man sitting at his desk.
Just sort of hanging out,
Spock goes in the next room and sees a dead woman who is definitely not a mannequin.
Are you sure?
He says she's dead and was strangled, but definitely not a mannequin. No, not at all.
Yes, couldn't be a mannequin. No.
All right. The random crewman Joey comes in and says that the rest of the station is dead, including there was a man taking a shower fully clothed.
As you do, when it's going crazy freezing out, you hop the shower and make sure you're covered in water so you can freeze faster, right?
Yes. Everyone knows that.
I know, right?
Spock goes to check on the rest of the station, and Joey's nose itches. Oh no.
Let me scratch my nose here. Yes.
He takes off one of his gloves of his hazmat suit, puts the glove down on the dead guy's head, scratches his nose under his hazmat hood, leans down to scan something, puts his hand on the side of the desk where we see some kind of red goo drip onto his bare hand. He then puts his glove back on right before Spock enters and says to be sure they have not been exposed to anything.
So, obviously, Joe's not very good at this.
See, this thing, this is why no one questioned it in Man Trap when they said that the guy just ate a poisonous fruit.
Yes. It's like, yeah, people on our ship just don't seem to have a lot of common sense. It's like, okay, it's minus bazillion degrees in this room. So you take off your glove that's keeping your hand warm, put that glove on a dead body to rub your nose, and then proceed to put your hand on the ice where it gets exposed to something. But independent of that exposure, to that unknown quantity, you're also putting your bare hand on ice.
Yes, weird alien space ice.
Yes. So you're basically going out of your way to endanger yourself.
Yep. Spock calls the Enterprise and reports that everyone on the station is dead. When Kirk asks what causes it, Spock zooms in on the camera and says it's like nothing we've dealt with before.
Dun, 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 and title sequence.
Which, I get it, but that could describe literally every episode we've seen so far.
Pretty much, yes. So it's like, okay, so there's some weird stuff going on here, and we just haven't seen it before. Well, yeah, because it's like the fourth episode, right?
Yeah, it is only the fourth episode. We have seen 3 things. This is not any of those 3 things.
And 2 of those things were kind of similar to each other.
Was it a salt monster or God? Nope. Well, never seen it before.
All right, let's go on. So let's go exploring this unknown territory.
Spock and Joe beam back aboard the Enterprise. And Scotty activates a blinky light decontamination function on the transporter, which is actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, I'd say we're gonna go radiate you guys. Cover your groins and you're good.
Yep.
Hooray!
Back in sickbay, McCoy says that Joey is fine, and then asks Spock to lie down, where he insults him for being Vulcan.
It's like, oh yes, all your readouts are off the charts, or inverted, or going crazy. This is just you being a Vulcan and throwing off my instruments, which aren't calibrated for you.
Yeah, I didn't know quite how to write this down in my notes, but I just thought this scene was funny because they give them some sort of weird. The bed that they're lying down in can tilt down so that they can stand up.
Yep.
And the person, the assistant who's dealing with the bed, they lift it up so Joe can get off, and then Spock stands on it, and then they put it back down. And the assistant doesn't take his hand off the pillow the entire time, because he's obviously just holding the bed down to keep it from swinging back up while he's lying there.
Well, we got a thing here. We just put your hand there. Hope no one notices.
Yeah, nice old props. It was just fun for me. Kirk enters, and Joe starts talking about how terrible it was on the planet, and he keeps wondering. Kirk then interrupts him and says he's wondering if man was meant to be out here.
Out in space.
Yes. Now, I couldn't quite tell whether this was meant to be that, like, Joe keeps saying this, because it's kind of a lie. It's like you keep wondering, yet you keep signing up. So does this mean that Joe keeps questioning whether man is meant to be in space, or that Kirk just assumes everyone on board is questioning whether man should be in space?
That's a good question. I was kind of wondering that myself. It's just a topic of conversation that just kind of comes up constantly, in which case, can you really rely on your crew to be, on their best if they're just kind of spooked about all this all the time?
Yeah, like the way he interrupted him, the first time I was watching through, I thought it was like, oh, that's just a common thing. Everyone wonders if we're supposed to be out here. The second time I was kind of wondering if maybe it's like this guy's personal issue. But either way, wondering whether you should be meant to actually be in space at all doesn't seem like a good reason to be aboard a spaceship.
Yes. I have severe doubts about the situation. Well, you could just stay home.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Kirk asks Spock if he has any idea what happened to the planet, and he says no, but that he will look at the ship's record for clues.
Time to go do research.
Joe keeps being upset. Kirk tells him to go get some rest.
He rubs his hands and things like that.
Yes, he's wringing his hands and playing creepy music.
Mm-hmm.
Nurse Chapel enters, which is the first time we have seen her on the series.
Hello, Miss Nurse Chapel.
Yes, she is played by Majel Barrett, where I just put this here. This is her second role. The first time we've seen her, but she played the first officer in the original Star Trek pilot. She also was the voice of the computer, not only in this, but in all subsequent Star Trek series. Until her death in 2008, she also played Lwaxana Troi on Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
So probably the most Star Trek-y Star Trek actor ever.
Yes. And sometimes when, especially when I see her showing up in the original series here, because I was exposed to her as an actor in the TNG era first, I always was like, oh, it's Lwaxana. Wait, no, this is Nurse Chapel. Oh, okay.
Yes. Not currently, but later married to Gene Roddenberry.
Yes.
We then cut to the conference room where the crew review the tapes from the planet, which is some weird panning camera shots of the office we just saw.
A bit earlier, and while they were on the planet, where Spock had a device that was sort of pointing at things. Probably that was supposed to be the camera.
Yes, some sort of future recorder. Kirk says the crew was behaving as if it was drugged, but McCoy rules out any forms of drugs or infection. Spock says it could be some sort of space madness that they've never encountered before.
Yes.
Which also means they have encountered some sort of space madness.
Just not this kind of space madness.
They detected no contamination, but Scotty corrects them, saying that they only didn't correct anything that the tricorders were designed to detect.
So if it's something totally new, which Spock kind of implied when before the title sequence, then they might not be able to scan for it at all because they don't know what they're looking for.
Yes, Spock says that the tricorders can only pick up what they were programmed to, and that space is filled with infinite unknowns.
Why even try? Why even be in space? I mean, jeepers, guys.
Kirk reports the need to maintain a tight orbit to observe the planet, and Spock says that they will need to maintain peak efficiency to maintain safety. Scotty reassures them that his engines will be able to warp them away as fast as possible at the first sign of trouble.
Sounds like a good plan. Everything seems to be working out perfectly. Peachy King.
Yes.
Peachy King all the way here.
And O'Hara reports that the bridge has just detected that the breakup of the planet is beginning.
Yes.
In the rec room, we see 3D checkers.
Hoo-ha!
Sitting next to 3D chess. I want that. I'm very bad at chess, but I will take some 3D checkers.
Let's get a checkers board together and we'll play sometime. In 3 dimensions.
That would be fun. Joey gets some food from the dispenser and sits down. Sulu and the new crew member we've not seen before, Riley, enter. Sulu is talking about his love of fencing. Riley seems to think that swords are stupid.
What, you can stab people with swords? Well, what, you shish kebabs? What?
Yeah, Sulu starts talking up the health benefits of fencing, and yeah, fencing is an Olympic sport. Yeah. It shouldn't need defense as exercise. I fenced in college, so this is near and dear to my heart.
I've not done fencing before, but I have done like SCA, Society of Creative Activism sort of things before, and it can be quite the workout.
Yes, it is very, very fast, and you're like, the matches can last for up to like half an hour, and you are constantly running the entire time.
Yeah.
It is a workout.
Like, well, we're gonna sort of have you run a quarter marathon while also flailing your arms around as you try to poke and avoid being poked at the same time.
Yep. So
Good luck.
they fence. Like Picard even fences on Next Gen. I hate this whole fencing thing. They shouldn't complain about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool, guys.
Sulu asks Joey to back him up. Apparently Joey knows something about fencing, but he is too busy rubbing his hands and doesn't seem to be paying any attention.
He's kind of out of it, man.
When Sulu asks if he's okay, Joey yells that Sulu doesn't outrank him and he doesn't have pointed ears. Except I'm pretty sure Sulu does outrank him.
Joey's just being a jerk face at this point.
O'Hara over the intercom orders all bridge personnel to the bridge. Joey starts ranting about how they shouldn't be out here and they're all hypocrites and they're polluting space and destroying space and they shouldn't be in space. And he grabs a knife and starts waving it around, and he says if men were supposed to fly, they would have wings, and if we were supposed to be in space, we wouldn't need air. He then turns the knife on himself, saying that 6 people died on the planet and he doesn't deserve to live. Sulu and Riley grab him and try to get the knife away from him, but they fail. They all fall, and he stabs himself in the fall with what looks kind of like grape juice.
Yes. Also, the knife he had looked like a butter knife.
Yeah. So I mean, that could hurt.
Yeah, if you stab hard enough.
So if you fell on it, I'm sure it would stab you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the group that we saw earlier who were playing checkers on the other side of the room, they keep cutting away to them, like looking over and being mildly concerned that all this is happening. Like, oh, he's got a knife. Back to checkers.
I don't know. It's your move. Yeah.
All right. Riley calls for medics, but then starts to rub his hands the same way that Joey was.
Oh, no. Whatever it is, he's got it, too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's all that grape juice.
In the captain's log, Kirk reports that unbeknownst to them at the time, they have brought aboard a dangerous disease to the ship.
Pre-knowledge of the captain in the log of the future, perhaps of the present.
Yes. Well, this is an interesting one. I didn't get a chance to mention this before, so I put in a little thing here. The captain's log idea was kind of posited when they were writing the first couple episodes as a, like we have a lot of stuff to explain for each episode for it to make any sense. And they're like, well,
Yep.
What if it already happened? Like, what if this isn't a future show? What if this is a show about, like, the captain remembering things that happened to him throughout his career?
A historical documentary of sorts.
Yeah, more like that. So anytime that we have the captain's log, it's meant to be after all of this is done, the captain is kind of reporting back on what happened.
Yeah, which I actually really kind of like this interpretation because it also, in some degree, can help with continuity snarls in Star Trek, just in general. It's like, okay, maybe this is sort of like a reenactment of those events, in universe. And as such, some things aren't going to be quite correct.
Yeah.
But it's still, it's sort of like, okay, this sort of thing that shows up once that was never mentioned again, maybe that was just misremembered from that one time. Maybe it's something completely different or misinterpreted by the people recording it at the time.
Yes. Though it's great. Like, the logs are like one of the best things in Star Trek, getting all that exposition out of the way.
Yes. It's like, oh, here's your info dump and moving on.
Okay. We need to stop getting distracted so we can get through this episode. It's a long one. On the bridge, they are continuing to maintain orbit around the planet, and Spock reports that as the planet degrades faster than expected, the data that they gather could be a look into Earth's distant future, which just kind of bugs all the humans. Like, why are you talking about Earth being destroyed?
It's like, what? Like, no, like billions of years in the future.
Riley and Sulu at the helm are both rubbing their hands as the dramatic music plays. Spock looks over the psychological records of the crew and says that Joey had an extreme capacity for self-doubt that had always been hidden, but now seems to have been brought out.
Yes.
But that he probably still wouldn't have tried to kill himself.
Yeah, something was pushed him even beyond that.
Yes.
Going from sort of, I kind of have a little self-esteem and, kind of nervous about the situations to, oh God, everything's just totally impossible. I got to get out of here. So going from
which like the idea that they have these weird detailed psychological profiles of everyone that can predict latent personality traits is a bit weird.
It is the future, so I guess anything is possible. But you're just having those accessible to the first officer is kind of a little awkward. Just should be like a medical personnel sort of situation.
Yes, probably. But speaking of, we cut to sickbay where McCoy is doing surgery on Joey, and Nurse Chapel is assisting by handing him various salt shakers.
Yes.
They are Art Deco-y salt shakers. I read that in one of the prop things.
Helps fit in with the futuristic sort of vibe here.
Yeah.
And Joey's not feeling very well in this scene.
No.
Not doing well at all.
We cut back to the bridge in the middle of this surgery, where an alarm is going off. Kirk asks what's going on, and Sulu says that a change in gravity is pulling them down towards the planet. Kirk orders them to compensate, but neither of them do, and so Kirk reaches over and hits a button to fix the problem.
It's like, come on, push the button, guys.
Yes.
It's not easy.
Riley says that he must be nervous, and Kirk seems really unconcerned that the people driving the ship can't perform very basic tasks.
Like, okay, you're nervous. I guess I get to ignore that now, as opposed to find someone who's not super nervous and able to do the job.
Back in sick bay, Joe dies.
Yep, he just kind of dies.
Just dies. McCoy says that his injuries weren't that bad and that the surgery should have worked.
It's like, yeah, just like he gave up.
He asks Kirk to come down to sickbay, but Kirk is busy doing bridge things.
Like, I'm busy, guy. We're like gonna die if I don't babysit these two guys up here. What do you want?
Kirk tells engineering that they should connect directly into the helm so that they can get power as quickly as possible when they need it. I don't know why engineering is not connected to the helm. Seems weird.
Yeah, especially given so kind of goes down later, but yeah.
Yeah. Kirk leaves to see what McCoy wanted, and Sulu decides to sneak off to the gym, leaving the helm unattended.
It's time to go do a workout, guys. Bye.
Anyone who hasn't seen this, you have no idea how much fun George Takei looks like he's having in this scene. He's just bobbing his head up and down and doing this super exaggerated sneak off to the turbo lift.
It's like I'm so excited to go do this, guys. I'm not even acting anymore.
Yeah, we'll get into that later, actually.
Yes.
In sickbay, McCoy is telling Kirk that Joey died for no reason. He just didn't want to live anymore.
Well, he was kind of suicidal, but it's even on top of that. It's like, well, he just sort of willed himself to death.
Kirk asks if the fact that Joe was on the planet could have been a connection, and McCoy says that he tested for everything that was possible. And Kirk tells him he wants him to check for the impossible, too.
Okay, then.
We're getting more into themes of things we haven't seen before and exploration.
Yeah, which is good, but it kind of, once again, begs the questions like, okay, you're out to explore the universe. Shouldn't looking for things you have not seen before be the first thing you do, or maybe the second thing that you don't need to be told to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the bridge, Spock finally notices Sulu is gone.
Surprise!
He quickly runs to correct course and asks Riley why Sulu is not at his post. Riley just sings songs about how O'Reilly's here and one Irishman is worth 1,000 of you.
Thanks.
Spock interrupts him, telling Uhura to take over his station. Riley yells about letting the women work and universal suffrage. Spock then orders him to go to sickbay and asks Kirk to return to the bridge. I didn't know Riley was supposed to be Irish, but...
Well, I got some things to talk about that later, but yeah, it's going on.
Riley wanders through the hallways, stroking the walls and staring at women. We couldn't get through one episode without someone staring at one of the miniskirts.
And at this point, I was like, wait, didn't Spock ask security to go pick up Riley and make sure he gets to sickbay?
Yep, security is sleeping on the job.
They're just kind of missing in action, whatever. It's good.
He enters sickbay where he asks what happened to Joe. Nurse Chapel tells him that Joe died, and Riley says that Joe's mistake was not being Irish. He then leaves as Nurse Chapel begins rubbing her hands.
Wow. Yeah. Riley, you're kind of a dick.
Yeah, a little bit. We cut to Sulu in the hall, shirtless and waving a sword around.
Hooray!
He stabs his thumb with the end to demonstrate that it is sharp, and then jumps around the corner and threatens two crewmen in the hallway, lunging at them until they run away.
No escape for you!
He yells cowards and climbs up an engineering ladder laughing.
Very swashbuckling.
Kirk returns to the bridge and asks what on earth is going on with his crew and what symptoms Riley had when he left. Spock says that he seemed very pleased with himself, as if he were drugged. Yes. Kirk calls for security to find Riley, which I thought they were already doing.
Like, do your job, guys!
And cordon off any crewmen that they've come into contact with so that they can be medically checked. Uhura begins reporting disturbances from around the ship that Sulu was threatening crewmen with a sword.
Well,
Spock says a pattern is developing.
You think?
Well, this is the first I'm hearing of this pattern.
Yeah.
So far, a bunch of random junk has been happening.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there's some randomness here. It's maybe connected, but, at this point, things are starting to really kind of speed up as far as the unusual behaviors.
Yes. Well, Spock says that Joe's is having hidden personality traits come to the surface, that Riley fancies himself a descendant of Irish kings. Okay. And that Sulu is at heart a swashbuckler. Also, the first we're hearing of this.
Surprise!
His line of thought is interrupted by the ship shaking around, and Spock reports that the gravity is increasing and that they should stabilize, but the helmsman reports that the ship is not answering commands and that the engines are down.
Oh noes, we're all going to die.
They are all going to die. There's no answer from engineering, and Kirk is about to leave to see what's happening when Sulu jumps out of the turbolift waving his sword.
Aha!
Kirk asks him to put the sword down and pokes his hand on it. I actually kind of like that scene. It's funny. Sulu continues randomly waving his sword around. Uhura tries to calm him down, but Sulu grabs her. This is the best bit. Sulu grabs her. He says, "I'll protect you, fair maiden," and she yells, "Sorry, neither," and pushes herself away. It's I think her best line in the series. This distracts him enough for Kirk and Spock to bring him down, and this is the first time we see the Vulcan nerve pinch on screen.
Yes, and I think Kirk even says, "You're going to have to show me that sometime."
Yes.
Yeah.
Though apparently it's the second time it was used if we're going in like film order, which is why they don't draw any attention to it.
It's like, oh, yeah, you're doing that thing again. Okay.
We haven't seen it yet, but apparently we will in a couple episodes.
Kirk has seen it. We haven't.
Kirk calls engineering again, and Riley answers.
Oh, no. Riley, what are you doing?
Riley is saying that he relieved Scotty of duties and that he is going to order the cooks to give double portions of ice cream to the entire crew.
Well, hooray! I like ice cream.
Kirk has to wait for the elevator, which I just kind of liked. He goes up to the door and it's not there because they just took Sulu down.
It's like, okay, you actually have to wait.
Yeah.
Unlike any other time in Star Trek where it's like just already
well,
this
is probably why in Next Generation the bridge has 4 separate turbolifts.
Well, if you need to get somewhere quickly, it's good to have at least one of these on standby.
Yes. Riley begins to sing an old favorite Irish tune over the intercom. This continues for the remainder of the episode.
And I am tempted to do what you call it, the Whose Line Is It Anyway Irish drinking song game now. I think I'll be passing on that.
Okay.
But still, ID.
That'll be if we get a Patreon going. You can do it as a special.
All right.
Spock reports that they only have 20 minutes before their orbit degrades and they burn up. This is the first time in the episode, which I kind of thought was interesting. Spock is holding a circular slide rule.
Didn't notice that.
Yes. He has it a few times. Every time he mentions doing a calculation, he's holding a slide rule.
Yes, I'm actually doing a calculation with the mechanical device that people of the time of this series going up would be kind of inferring its meaning and its purpose.
Yeah, we can talk about this later. It just kind of points to one of my favorite things about old science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to that later because we're, I guess, nearing the end here.
Yes.
Right. Kirk runs to engineering, and the captain's log informs us that the ship will be doomed in 19 minutes.
Oh no, we have 19 minutes before to complete the episode.
Scotty says that Riley just ran into engineering, told everyone that the captain needed them, and then locked the door.
And everyone just kind of left to go see what the captain wanted.
Yep.
Because.
I mean, at least they didn't take their gloves off on a dead alien planet.
True. But dang, this crew is really gullible.
Yes. Apparently, the only way to get the door open is to cut a big hole in the wall.
And there's only one door.
Yeah, there's only one door. There's no auxiliary panel. There's no outside controls. They have to cut a hole in the wall with a phaser. On the bridge, Uhura reports that there are fights breaking out all over the ship.
Unusual behaviors. Running rampant.
Spock orders a general alert, but it gets cut off because Riley says that it interrupted his song.
Like, don't make me be quiet. I need to be broadcasting this tune I'm singing off key to everybody.
Yeah.
Forever. Listen to me. I'm going to fill up your social media timeline with all sorts of nonsense now.
Kirk orders that Riley be cut off because of all the frickin' singing. Uhura yells that if there was a way to do it, she would have.
Trying, Captain, but come on. Give me a break.
And Spock just runs over and also starts to poke on buttons on the panel.
Spock is getting annoyed.
But they report that Riley is in complete control of the ship, as Riley orders a dance on the shipboard bowling alley.
Oh, yeah, we got a bowling alley. I forgot about that.
Apparently. The ship suddenly tilts violently, throwing the crew all around. McCoy calls the bridge and tells them that they need to keep the dang ship still because he's trying to run tests on Sulu, and there's nothing that he can do until he figures out what's wrong with him.
I'm going to have to paraphrase or actually adapt a line from Freakazoid here for a moment. Sulu! I'm experimenting on Sulu!
Riley continues giving weird, creepy orders that women should wear their hair down loosely and not wear too much makeup. And then he starts singing again. So,
Riley, you're being annoying in one way or another, and it's getting old.
Mm-hmm. We cut to Scotty in the Jeffries tube, putting 3 something or others on different parts of it.
Yes, I'm going to put these magnets here and there. It's all going to be pretty sweet when this is all done decorating here. Hooray!
Just a quick side note, not actually known as a Jeffries tube at this point.
Yep.
Was named after Matt Jeffries, who was this set designer, but was not actually referred to as a Jeffries tube in the series until Next Generation, but was generally called that by the crew because it was a giant tube that Jeffries had made.
Excellent.
So it's a crew joke that later got used in main lore.
Yeah, I love that when it shows up in science fiction. And it happens in Star Trek a few times, and other series. Was it? I think something called Netter syndrome shows up in Babylon 5, and that's like one of the executive producers' names. Like, we need something scary. What's the scariest thing around here? Oh yeah, our executive producer.
I forget the official name, but apparently they named the person who designs the Enterprise in fiction Jeffries in honor of Matt Jeffries, the set designer.
Nice.
Scotty tells the bridge that they should have enough power to keep the ship stabilized with the thingamabobs he put in the tube, I guess.
Yep.
Spock grabs his slide rule again and says that they only have 16 minutes until the ship is destroyed.
I'm getting some Flash Gordon vibes here. We only have 16 minutes to save the Earth.
There's a good ticking clock going in this episode.
Yep. Yes, it's getting the pressure up. Wow.
Kirk orders Spock to go help McCoy, but first to hurry Scotty up. We cut to Scotty cutting through the bulkhead with his phaser. We cut to a man laughing at a paintbrush. Some weird quick cuts in this episode.
Yes.
Spock enters the hallway, yells at the crewmen to go to sick bay, and then sees the words "Love Mankind" painted on the wall.
Okay.
They play weirdly dramatic music for that one.
Yes. So is this supposed to be super sinister, or just kind of like, what?
Is it a hate crime because he's not human? He turns the corner to see Yeoman Rand being sung at by a crewman.
Poor Rand. Always creeped on.
Yep. Couldn't get through one episode.
Spock's like, hey, get out of here, get bent, except he's doing it all Spock-like then, of course.
Yes, and then the guy does stand aside right until Spock leaves, and then he runs back and blocks her path, and she yells for him to come back, but apparently he doesn't.
Dang it, Spock.
We cut back to Scotty, who is still cutting away. Scotty tells Spock that he can't work any faster and maintain a safety factor, Spock tells him that at the current rate it will take about 1 minute longer than they actually have, so he can't afford to have a safety factor.
So cut faster. Don't mind if you get electrocuted in the process. Have fun.
Yeah. Back in sickbay, McCoy is being angry at the computer terminal because he hasn't gotten a biopsy report back. Chapel tells him that the thing that's knocking out Sulu is tranquilizer. There we go. My notes got messed up.
Yes.
Tells him that the tranquilizer is wearing off, and McCoy says that it's good because he'll need Sulu awake to torture him in a little while. Chapel moves to continue scanning Sulu as McCoy leaves to get this biopsy report he's been yelling about, but instead she starts rubbing her hands and playing with her hair.
She starts acting strange as well.
Back on the bridge, Kirk is removing a laughing man from the helm.
And not the laughing man from standalone complex.
No. He takes it himself until Yeoman Rand enters, saying that she would have been there sooner if it weren't for the creepy crewman. Kirk orders her to take the helm. Again, yells at her to cut off Riley. She snaps at him and then kind of remembers that he's the captain. And Kirk actually apologizes for being kind of a jerk.
I think around this point, I'm starting to wonder, maybe Uhura's also been affected, but her thing is just not take anyone's crap. So
Maybe.
No one kind of notices.
She probably should, she should have been affected because Sulu did grab her earlier.
Yes.
So it could be that.
It's like, I'm just gonna act normal. I'm just tired of you guys, being jerk faces all the time. So I'm gonna do my job. Let me do my job. Go away.
Kirk calls Scotty, saying that they have 12 minutes left and that they'll need at least 2 minutes to get the engines back up. Scotty assures him that they will make it if everything goes right.
If everything is perfect.
Because
Hooray!
it's been going right so far. Spock enters sickbay, and Chapel starts flirting with him as he looks for the doctor.
Which is sort of establishing this sort of lingering crush she has on Spock, going forward.
It's the unrequited love.
Yes.
She says that she loves him, and Spock is called to the bridge and slowly wanders out of the room saying that he's sorry.
Mm-hmm.
In the hallway, we see him holding back tears. Kirk once again joins Scotty as they finally get the door to engineering open, where they run in and Kirk removes Riley.
Get out of here, Riley.
Meanwhile, Spock enters the briefing room. He starts yelling that he's in control of his emotions and his duties will keep him safe, and then he starts to break down crying. Yeah,
this bit with Spock, having this breakdown is kind of really good.
Yeah, it goes on in too weird a way for me to be able to write it in the synopsis very well, but it is a really well acted scene.
Yeah, so he's trying to remind him of his duty, trying to keep composure, even smacking his hands together as he's doing all this to sort of distract him, to sort of get him to refocus again. And it's just it's kind of really powerful for someone who's, especially as we get to know him further down the series, is very much about, I'm in control, emotions are being suppressed or non-existent, and I'm always having it together. This is sort of kind of a powerful moment in that context.
In engineering, Uhura informs Kirk that they are entering the planet's atmosphere and they have about 8 minutes until they burn up.
Hooray!
Scotty tells him that Riley has turned the engines completely off, and now they will need 30 minutes to restart them.
And this is a famous line of Scotty's is I cannot change the laws of physics.
Yes, it's the first time he can't change the laws of physics.
Yes.
Scotty and Kirk continue to try to cut down the time it will take to start the engines, and Scotty says that they can't mix matter and antimatter cold or it will explode. But Kirk says that in theory, if they get the mix just right, it will create a controlled implosion instead of an explosion.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Scotty says that has never been done. Kirk asks if Spock is on the bridge, but she tells him that he is not, and we just make a quick, immediate cut to Sulu screaming in front of the camera.
Hello, Sulu. I see you are in a bad shape there.
Yes.
Hope you're doing well.
Out of nowhere, there's Sulu pain. When he's done screaming, he says, I was on the bridge. I'm confused and weird now.
Yes, and McCoy ejects him through this part too. So
yes, McCoy just calls the biolab as we found the cure, start isolating it, we're good.
Yep. We can do the thing.
He says that for some reason the water on this planet turned into a complex molecule chain that passes from person to person through sweat, and once in the bloodstream acts like alcohol.
Yeah, I don't think we quite enunciated it quite right, but a lot of people that were affected were super sweaty.
Yes, very sweaty.
Glistening, in fact.
That's true. Sweat has played a major theme.
Everyone's hot and bothered.
Kirk finally finds Spock in the briefing room. Spock is still crying and says that he never told his mother that he loved her. and how horrible it must have been for her as a human living on a planet with no emotion.
Yes, so we are now establishing that Spock's mom is a human.
Yes. This is the first time. Before, it was just a random ancestor.
Yes, someone in my ancestry was a human. Hooray!
Spock says that he's always been ashamed of his Earth blood, and Kirk slaps him. Spock says that he was ashamed of the friendship that he feels for Kirk, and Kirk slaps him more.
Kirk, you're freaking out here.
Kirk tells him that they need the formula to make the engines go.
It makes formula.
Spock tells him that he has suppressed his emotions for so long, and then he smacks Kirk across the room.
You smacked me, I'm gonna smack you back.
Don't smack a Vulcan. They're stronger than you.
Yes. They might have the spindly arms, but they're like made out of steel or something. I don't know.
Spock reiterates that the cold engine start has never been done. Kirk starts slapping at the console and being angry and rants about love and how he loves the ship, but he gives too much to the ship. But he's not allowed to notice the yeoman. If you notice the yeoman, you're allowed to notice the yeoman. I'm not allowed to notice the yeoman.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, Kirk, we get it. You're trying to be like the good guy here and not like be creeping on everybody like all your rest of the crew seems to be. But could we get back to the whole "we're going to die soon" thing?
Yeah. Also, there's this whole thing like I would have been sleeping with my assistant if it weren't for me being the pesky captain.
Good.
Yeah, I guess there's at least some restraint happening
Yes.
there. Spock interrupts him to tell him that there is an untested formula with a theoretical relationship between antimatter and time.
So this seems like a winner.
Yeah, makes no sense to me, but okay. Kirk continues to rant about not wanting to be the captain so he can love on crew members.
So you're going to resign and sign up as a random ensign then?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Scotty enters and takes Spock away to save the ship, while Kirk controls himself just enough to say that he'll never lose you to the ship. Back on the bridge, McCoy rips Kirk's sleeve off to give him an injection.
Which I find hilarious, given that clearly McCoy is injecting everybody, but only Kirk's sleeve is ripped.
Yeah, he just doesn't like him.
I'm gonna mess up your shirt, Captain. Yeah, you're not gonna remember this later.
Kirk sits down, reaches longingly for Yeoman Rand's face, and then looks all sad as he sits back down in his chair.
So maybe this is why Kirk later has the reputation of like trying to sleep around so much. It's because he's this suppressed about his own crew, so he has to sleep with everybody else.
Yeah. Spock tells Kirk that they are ready, and Kirk orders them to engage.
Engage, do the thing.
Yes, apparently this is where engage comes from.
Hooray!
There's some sort of weird noise. Everyone looks hurt, and we kind of fade away to this wonky starscape-looking thing.
Sort of like a cluster of stars with like stuff floating out the sides, and it's kind of awkward.
Back on the bridge, Spock tells them that the engine power went off the scale, and they are traveling faster than is actually possible in normal space.
So warp, but double that.
Sulu reports that his chronometer is running backward.
Yes.
Kirk
weird.
orders them to reverse power. This slows down the chronometer until it's moving forward again. Spock reports that the ship is back in normal time and that they've traveled back in time 3 whole days.
Oh,
3 days. And Spock says now they know that the formula works, they can go back in time whenever. And Kirk says they might risk it one day and to resume course.
Sweet, you now have a time travel machine forever.
Yeah, forever, or for one episode. Yes. Overall, this is a really good episode. I liked it. It has good pacing. It keeps up the suspense.
Mm-hmm.
It relies on the crew being as dumb as bricks.
Which happens. But it also explores some of the crew's personalities, some of their motivations, some of the things that they're kind of worried about and suppressing in their day-to-day lives. Through this sort of inebriation virus.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I kind of wish they had done it later in the series.
Yes,
and
so you could actually, compare and contrast more.
Yeah, because it's the 4th episode, so we don't really know that much about them.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, seeing them act weird, especially since no one on this ship has ever reacted strangely to anyone acting weird ever.
Yep. It's like, I'm gonna creepy eyes you. Well, that's cool. Let's go get something to eat. I'm going to try to attack you now. Oh, I should be mildly upset about this.
Yes. The ending was a bit awkward and I think ruined things for me a little bit.
Yeah, well, I believe there's a reason for that. This was originally supposed to be a two-parter, I think.
Yeah, it was supposed to end with them going back in time, finding themselves in orbit around Earth, and revealing that it was actually Earth of 1960.
Surprise!
And then they would have ended the episode and then come back in with the episode Tomorrow is Yesterday.
And progressing from there, yes.
Yeah, but the network didn't want to tie the episodes together like that, so they had to rewrite it as a standalone and just kind of have this kind of foreshadowing thing of time travel.
This is a thing that now exists in our universe.
Yes, which I guess worked out because the way that they decided to split up the episodes, Tomorrow is Yesterday was actually run as episode 19. So there would be a little bit of a wait.
Yes. Remember that time we went back in time and then we just kind of were back in the present and then we went back in time later?
Yep.
That was connected somehow. So let's actually discontinuity that and just sort of make it a standalone. Okay, it works.
Yes. So to figure out what to talk about for this episode, the first thing that I did is I watched this, and then I immediately watched The Naked Now, which is the follow-up kind of reboot episode that they did of this on Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, watching them back to back, I did not realize how straight up of a remake the one in Next Generation is.
Yep. Including right down to someone in engineering doing something that's going to get them all killed by basically disabling the ship.
Yeah, someone takes over engineering, disables the ship, is going to get them all killed, orders ice cream. It's like a beat for beat remake.
It's like, it's more than rhyming here. It's just repeating the same stuff, guys.
Yeah, though unfortunately it did kind of, like we talked a little bit about how if they'd done this later, the characters would have been better established. Mm-hmm. But on Next Gen, they did it as the second/third episode. Yep. Because it was right after the first pilot they encounter at Farpoint.
So we kind of knew the characters a little bit once again, but not really as much as we really need to.
I was having trouble telling because I am very familiar with Next Generation characters. I've probably seen the series all the way through 6 or 7 times.
Yeah.
But it really felt like they spent a lot of time at the beginning kind of detailing how the characters act normally before they get into the here's how they act with Drunk Virus.
Yeah, I remember that too. Is sort of like, okay, the overall buildup of the virus was, I guess, it felt like it was slower in The Naked Now.
Yes. Also, Geordi LaForge, Next Gen, is the first person to get infected.
Poor Geordi.
He gets infected because someone falls on him, not because he took off his hazmat suit.
It's a little bit more responsible.
He comes back on board, and everyone goes, Geordi, are you okay? Let's check this out. There's something wrong with Geordi. Instead of, well, we checked out Joe. He's ranting about space madness, but otherwise he seems fine.
Let's be a little bit more responsible about things in the future. So maybe they, in general, best practices have improved since the original series era.
Yeah, at least things have improved, it's for crew members. That's probably why they don't kill as many of them off by the time we get to Next Gen.
Yep. Still a few deaths here and there, but they're a little bit more, rare and thus more poignant and or shocking.
Yes. So they did go a lot into kind of exploration ideas in this one. Mm-hmm. There's, I guess, since this is the middle of the space race, exploring space would have been a lot on people's minds.
Yeah, as well as the question of should we even bother? Joe's rant about it's like, oh, if men had wings, they would be flying and stuff like that. It's like, well, that's not really the point. It's because we can make these things possible that we should be doing them.
Yeah, and there has always been kind of a discussion around, like, is it worth our time to be exploring space? Like, what are we actually going to get out of it?
Oh, yes, because also already, as we've experienced in our lives, we have both discoveries in the sort of material. This is stuff that we needed to develop for the space race, and things since then that are now like components of our everyday technology. But also it gives us opportunities that might not necessarily be present. Even just at the low level, like, okay, now we can have communication satellites so we can beam information across the world much more efficiently. And, you can have satellite link ups and cell phones in the middle of Amazon jungles or on Antarctica or whatever, and it's all good. It's all pretty cool.
I don't know. It was kind of more of a like, should we explore things in general? And we're going to keep finding stuff that we don't know how to deal with.
Like, well, yeah, there is stuff that you don't know how to deal with, but part of improving ourselves is learning how to deal with things that we are not familiar with.
Yes, and I suppose that I swear this was like a trope or something that I heard of a while ago, but I've not been able to find it. But the basic idea that we shouldn't be exploring space was kind of yelled by a person who was kind of implied to be sort of a madman at the time.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like reinforcing your general point by having the opposite point made by someone who's crazy.
Yes, sort of your straw man argument in a way.
Sort of, though a little more, I guess a little more direct.
Yes, there's a specific trope for this particular thing where you're screeching madman who's saying everything that you disagree with.
Yes. Which I swear I read something about this, but I could not find a name for it anywhere I looked.
TV tropes.
They did have the mention of space madness.
Space madness.
Which was the thing they were worried about in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
The first space capsule that went up with Yuri Gagarin, the first person in space,
yes,
had a bunch of fail-safes that would prevent him from actually accessing the controls unless he was in full command of his faculties.
So if he started losing it and wasn't really able to focus and able to sort of, follow the procedures, just like, yeah, you're just not good anymore. We're going to put you on autopilot.
Yeah, basically, which is just interesting, the whole, we don't know what's going to happen to people out here. Maybe they'll just randomly go crazy. Does your brain even work in space?
Yeah, if you're weightless for so long, is that going to mess up your equilibriums and your brain chemistry just sort of breaks down? Well, I guess we should probably be careful in case it does.
Yeah, it sounds like the whole space madness thing sounds really silly to us now.
But they just didn't know at the time.
Yeah, and it is worth trying to keep your head in this kind of mental space for Star Trek, especially the older ones, because this is before we had even gotten to the moon.
Yeah.
Where we are now, we've gone to the moon so many times we're bored with it.
It's been a while since we put a man person on it.
Yes.
So, I guess after space madness, and concerns like that, and basic health things like, is your heart going to explode if you're in space, that sort of thing. There's concerns about radiation. They're concerned about the longer term stuff. Like, okay, you're up here, we know we can survive, but what about the long term effects? Is your muscles going to atrophy? Yes. Are your bones going to degrade? Yes. So what kind of things can we do to try to counter this? Is there maybe some chemistry we can go on? Or is it just you have to have a exercise regimen to sort of try to, counteract this stuff? And, it's more of the latter so far, but, they're still working on the other possibilities.
Yeah, though I guess by Star Trek time they had fixed that with artificial gravity and etc.
Yes. It would be cool at this, to have at this era a show of this length with, zero-G sort of situations, fairly common, but it's very understandable why they didn't.
Well, they said very directly in one of the memoirs I read that they invented zero gravity because they came into the board meeting and they're like, you've written that this is in space. We cannot afford to have them on wires in every episode.
Oh, man. Okay. We'll have gravity plating in the floorboards.
Apparently that's a thing. So, speaking of the technology, I mentioned briefly that Spock uses a slide rule several times in this episode.
A slide rule and not a calculator.
Yeah, and
weird.
Even for me, I know what a slide rule is because my dad had one, but I have never touched the thing. I don't know how it functions.
I've seen one, but yeah.
For anyone who's even slightly younger than us, a slide rule is how you used to do calculations before calculators were common.
Yeah, it's sort of you line up the numbers and then you sort of, it's like, okay, so this one would then relate to this number over here, and that can give us our answer sort of situation.
Yeah, it does something weird with logarithms that I never wrapped my head around.
I think I learned at one point, but I forgot, so.
But I love this. It's one of my favorite random things from old sci-fi is just this fact they could say okay, we're going to have faster than light travel. Okay, we're going to have artificial gravity. We're going to have tractor beams. We're going to have transporters. All this stuff we think is like viable enough that people aren't going to question it. But a computer that fits on a spaceship,
that's impossible.
Like the entire thing, Asimov had this, Heinlein had this, Bradbury had this. No one in the entire canon of science fiction from the 40s on through the 80s ever thought computers were going to get smaller.
Just kind of ridiculous thinking back now, but yeah, at the time it's here is a computer. It fits in a building.
Yeah.
Like in a room? No, in the building.
Asimov has at least six short stories that I can think of where the entire premise is, we turned most of the planet's surface into a computer to solve problems.
Sweet. Can we still use the planet for anything? Nope. That's only computers.
And they kept having things like this with Spock doing the manual calculations and stuff of we're going to have very specifically trained people to do calculations to work on a spaceship because we're only going to be able to fit a couple of computers on a spaceship. The things are heavy.
Yeah. I guess kind of in sort of the context of computers being rare and big like that, it would kind of imply that it would be a very good idea to have someone on board who is highly logical and able to focus like that.
Yeah,
so, a Vulcan.
And actually, that's a good segue into this other thing I've been thinking about with this episode and the last couple. They kind of have this weird two-part thing going on with Spock, where they keep positing him as kind of a weird person for not having emotions. He keeps bringing up that he doesn't have emotions. Other people kind of make fun of him for it and don't get how it works, and but they keep reinforcing the idea that not having emotions is good. It's a little weird to me.
I guess to a certain degree, it's okay, without emotions, you can be free of the irrational passions that drive so many people, and also drive so many people to make mistakes, to live lives that are not lived to their fullest. But on the other hand, if you don't have emotions, you could also argue that you don't have the motivation to live a good life. You are, you're effectively becoming a machine that, is, lacks value or motivation.
Yeah, but it's a weird one because they don't really get to that side of it very often. Like the last episode, we briefly mentioned that Kirk was ready to kill his friend, and then the hesitation that he had over not wanting to kill his friend almost killed him.
Yes.
And then in this episode, they have this whole thing where both Kirk and Spock have to try to control their emotions in order to get the ship saved.
Yes.
They keep having this continuing theme of Spock's going to say I'm better than you because I don't have emotions, and everyone's going to ha ha, silly Spock, and then they're going to get into a situation and go, darn, I have to not have emotions.
Well, maybe I was wrong about Spock the whole time.
Yeah, which is just weird. I mean, I get that since we're dealing with kind of Kirk is the 60s manly hero, controlling your emotions is supposed to be this quintessential manly leader thing.
I'm going to be in control, and no one's going to ever see me cry. Ugh, I'm going to flex now.
But it's just really weird when they put him up next to, this person doesn't have emotions, and it's weird. When they keep reinforcing that him not having emotions is this manly leadership thing.
Well, it's manly in leadership if it's a human doing it, but if it's an alien, then it's weird and unusual.
Yeah. Well, we haven't really gotten into that yet, but this show is it's pretty progressive for the time on the we've got diverse hiring, and we have people of different races on the ship and on the bridge crew. Is really mean to aliens.
A little bit, yes.
They keep being McCoy is outright racist towards Spock.
Yeah, it gets really kind of uncomfortable at times. It's dude, tone it down, McCoy.
Yeah, some of it I didn't remember it from this episode. I remember a little bit from other things that's a little bit of that good-natured ribbing, which they're doing that a little bit. If you have a friend who is in a different social group or something than you, every now and then you'll rib them about it a little because you're good friends and you kind of both understand that you don't mean it. but like the constant stuff, especially in this episode, like if you call that green stuff in your veins blood.
Well, yes, it is his blood. What's your point, McCoy?
Yeah, there's like a difference. There's a difference in this that's like weird. It's just weird how much McCoy like goes after Spock for this, and I don't understand it. It's just I don't know. It's just strange.
I guess to some degree, the series Enterprise kind of maybe touches on some of the, lingering bigotry of humanity, sort of in the early eras of the Star Trek. That there's some distrust between humanity and the Vulcans that pops up, and some people take it entirely too far. So maybe McCoy's kind of grew up in a family where that was sort of a thing.
Maybe. I mean, it is kind of, Enterprise has kind of put a lot of weird stuff into the canon on that side, especially with hating Vulcans. So maybe there's some of that if you're actually looking at it canonically. But since none of this has actually been established at this point in the series, right now it's just a weird amount of hostility towards non-humans.
McCoy just hates people of the Vulcan type.
Yeah, and they also keep telling Spock that he needs to feel more because he's not being human. And I remember very specifically in some later episodes, they keep talking about like, oh, you need to do this thing because that's what humanity is. And it's like, but we're all aliens.
Kind of be a jerk to Spock all the time then, I guess.
Yeah, and he appears to be the only non-human on the ship.
Yes, which it to a certain degree seems a little unusual, but sort of in the focus of the release of the original series here, that kind of makes sense because it's sort of in concept this is the future of humanity, not necessarily the United Federation of Planets.
Yeah,
though
I don't even know if they've really mentioned the Federation much by this point. I don't particularly remember it.
It's sort of like we're going out and doing things, and there's regulations and rules and things like that, but it's sort of not really defined what the government or superstructure it is at all at this point.
Yeah, and then there's just Spock on the ship, and I think aside from like the weird energy beings and the salt monster, he's like the only actual alien we've come across so far.
Yeah, and it's almost implying that aliens are very rare and very unusual. That maybe there's this planet of Vulcan humanity ran into at some point, and they just sort of picked this guy up.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what their original plans for him were at this point when they, just had him randomly aboard and seemed to not like him very much.
Like, well, we picked up this guy. He's really good at math. Let's keep him around and make him do math for us.
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought of it that way with this point in the series, where they really haven't visited other like civilized planets yet, or even really made much mention of them beyond that Spock is from Vulcan, but we don't know anything about it.
Yeah, for all we know, this is a universe that's been totally dominated by humanity. We've colonized 80% of the galaxy, and almost all the worlds of ours, except for these strange, unusual ones on the edge of space and that one Vulcan planet.
Yeah, I guess it'll be interesting to see how the Federation actually kind of evolves as we continue going through here. Well, that was everything that I had kind of noted down before I got to random facts. Did you have anything to add?
Oh, I got a few things.
Okay.
So the first thing is this inebriation and inhibition sort of idea that one of the main concepts of the episode is that these various crew members are getting a virus that lowers the inhibitions and sort of draws out some hidden personality quirk or some driving force, and it's kind of it's sort of a interesting idea, an interesting way to sort of reveal hidden truths about a person. Now, in back in time, in the real world, things like that, there's actually been like religious leaders who are like, okay, I'm going to get like really drunk, and then because I'm such a great devotee of the divine, I'm going to be all like, spouting things that are obviously true about the divine. So make sure to write down everything I say when I'm completely out of it. Which is kind of an interesting idea, but it sort of implies that when you're totally sober, what your inner self is, and which, it might not, totally sort of bubble up like that. Maybe the person you are inside is is horrible, or doesn't believe in anything you seem to be claiming, or maybe they're a lot better than what you sort of put on your outside. It's kind of, that there's an uncertainty there.
Well, that's an interesting. Well, that really kind of depends which school of psychology you kind of prescribe to.
Yes, and so maybe the trick is we should both get totally inebriated or something like that and do a podcast someday. Which, given I've never actually been drunk, that might be difficult for me, but we'll know.
Oh, so you don't actually have a frame of reference for this episode?
Not really, no. I guess the closest I've gotten is being excessively tired. Because I got this thing called sleep apnea.
Ooh.
And until I got help for that, I was basically for years sort of living in a constant haze forever.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very fun. I've heard of people with this, and it does not sound pleasant.
And after I got help for it, it's like, wow, I'm able to focus on things. This is so weird.
Well, just for the frame of reference, it's not dissimilar to being tired. But there is this is what was interesting to me, especially with this episode compared to the Next Generation episode. There is a staggering amount of self-awareness when you're inebriated. You just can't really do much about it.
It's like, oh God, what am I doing? Oh.
Yeah, it's I know I'm acting weird. I either just don't care that much that I'm acting weird, or I can't think of a better way to act. But you're doing these things.
And I guess in sort of my case with the excessive fatigue, even when I was excessively sort of on the edge, it's okay, it's time for usual bedtime. I'm just double exhausted what everybody else would feel, as opposed to just normal exhausted, which is when I'm waking up. The state of affairs was more of, okay, I have impulses perhaps to do weird or strange things, but I'm able to rely on the fatigue itself to bolster my willpower to not do those things. So it's sort of I can feel the impulse, but I don't have the willpower to even make it be a thing. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, to get back to your point a little with the with kind of the hidden true self thing that's coming out here. It's actually the same. It's the same basic Star Trek philosophy that they were doing in the last episode with the God being. It's just a little bit the other direction.
It's the inverse. As opposed to giving you power, it's removing the control on the power you have now.
Yes, but both of them kind of posit this idea that there's something inside of you that would come out if certain restrictions were taken away. So in the last episode, it was you're powerful enough that other people can't stop you from doing things. And in this episode, it's you are drunk and you can't stop yourself from doing things.
Yes. So, a bit of a theme connection, yes.
Yes. Which I guess is, I'm not sure which... I should do a little research on this since they keep bringing it up. I'm not sure what school of therapy was more prevalent around this time period.
Yeah, I'm a little ignorant on it myself, so maybe we should both be doing it.
Yeah, it seems a little similar to sort of the Freudian psychodynamic with the id sort of being controlled by the superego, and the superego gets taken away by inebriation and things, and lets your inner weirdness come out and play around.
Yes, there is a recent video by the Omega Geek on this particular subject. Maybe folks should check that out.
Yes, I was actually just watching that same one. So
involves Star Wars, so it's also science fiction.
It's a really good overview. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the only kind of thing that I could think of with it. I don't know. I've got some different views on the psychology side of things that I don't know if we have time to get into the nuances of. But this...
I guess my main point in sort of focusing on this is that this sort of thing, there are people in the day-to-day world that actively pursue inebriation, getting drunk for various reasons to avoid, say, problems, or to actively remove their inhibitions so they can go do things like, I'm too nervous to talk to girls, I'm going to drink, and then at the bar I'll go start hitting on people. And then you also got people that have it as an addiction, where they maybe started on one of those two, but just are now alcoholics, so they just can't escape it. But all of this, for those first two, there is sort of an implied knowing what you're doing, because the point of doing it is to let go of that control, to lose control of yourself.
Yeah.
And just in the alcoholic's case, you just can't stop losing control.
And there's a bit of that. Like, if we get into something as complex as addiction, there usually seems to be some other contributing factors that, like, it's not just you were using it recreationally and went too far. Like, there's something else in your life that is making this a better option for you than not doing it.
You might start drinking because you wanted to look cool and be as drunk as everybody else at the party. Then he's like, oh, I can use this to sort of not think about my problems. And then it's like, oh, and now I'm just addicted.
Well, something like alcoholism, you can become physically addicted, and it is one of the absolute worst drugs to be physically addicted to. It has a huge mortality rate. It's almost impossible to get off of. At a certain point, your body begins requiring it to a point where if you stop drinking it, you will die.
Yes, it's like, okay, you have to sort of wean yourself off, and even that's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, but before you get to the physical addiction, I need this to live stage, there's definitely a form of alcoholism in there that's from the things that I've read. I'm not trying to pretend to be an expert, and I want to stress that. But
it's more of the psychological need.
Yeah, it is a psychological need, but it's also you possibly are just doing it because a lot of the things that I've read recently have had more to do with something like PTSD, where you have all these horrible symptoms that this can actually help manage to a certain extent, even though it's a damaging drug, and things like that. So addiction's a little too complicated.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that aspect.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that seem to be coming out around addiction now, especially some of the more recent research and psychological thinking, is it's less about you started doing this thing as a party thing or to sort of dull things, and more that to massively oversimplify it, it's more of a you don't really see a better option.
Yes.
But again, that's a massive oversimplification. This is an incredibly complex issue, and I don't really want to get too far into it because I don't think we really can dedicate enough time and research to it right now.
Yeah. I guess in short, there are, in some cases, a set of perverse incentives that lead you down a destructive path that you may wish to avoid but are unable to do so.
Yes. But to the other point of the using it for direct things, it's I don't know, it's a bit hard to separate from culture.
Yes.
So throughout most of human history, alcohol was the main source of hydration. Beer and wine were safer than groundwater.
Because, it's the alcohol killing all the bacteria and other things. It's oh, I'm not going to get dysentery from this. Hooray!
Well, what the interesting thing with that is they didn't understand it at the time, but one of the key parts of the process for manufacturing alcohol is to boil the water. So boiling the water killed the dangerous things in it. That's all they needed to do. They just didn't understand that part of the process.
Yeah.
But so for a lot of human history, alcohol was just a thing that you drank, and there were people who would go too far. Inebriation was definitely still a thing, but it wasn't such a cultural force of you're going to get drunk and go out and have fun. So that kind of intentionality is more. It seems a lot more on the cultural side than on the you can use this to unleash your true inner whatever.
Yeah, it's sort of drinking, in moderation because it's just sort of what everyone does. Versus this sort of cultural vision of, okay, I need to calm down. I'm going to get a beer and I'm going to do the thing.
Yes,
just more of a modern construct.
And kind of like the thing you were saying before of religious leaders and stuff, and that kind of ceremonial usage. This is this interesting thing that I have been doing some reading similar to these topics recently, that just humans in general, and possibly other animals, but we have it more understood in humans, seem to have an innate, almost instinctual need to alter our state of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Like young children spin around in circles until they're dizzy.
What do you mean just young children? I do that too.
Yes, but it starts as young children, which indicates that it's probably something more innate than cultural.
A impulse to alter one's structures, to get out of ruts, to get out of endless cycles of the same thought patterns.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the theories right now, is it kind of is a creativity aid.
Yeah.
Like you have what they're calling your default node network, which is kind of how your brain functions when it's at rest.
Mm-hmm.
And doing these various things that disrupt the way your brain works interrupts your default node network and just lets new connections form that maybe wouldn't have otherwise.
Open up your brain word processor by doing this particular activity, and suddenly you're able to write a novel. And then you save and close, and you're like, oh, I now have a novel. Neat.
Yeah. Or even just like different ways of looking at common problems, or some other things. There's some interesting, like I've been reading some interesting psychology theories with it recently too, but like again, I would have to go into like the basic theory of psychology that we're working with, which itself would take another half hour, and yeah.
Yeah, we've already been talking for a while here. So shall we move on for a little bit more?
Yes, you said you had a couple of things.
So the next thing I want to touch upon is Irish stereotypes. So I just wanted to sort of draw attention to this, that this is maybe the first time, but it's far from the last time this has shown up in Star Trek. And like not just when Gene Roddenberry was running the show, but also like, post Roddenberry, because there's episodes like Up the Long Ladder in The Next Generation where you have they're transporting like a bunch of basically Irish stereotypes from one planet to another.
Yeah, where they have like an Irish village set up in the
like the cargo bay,
yes.
Right? It's like, well, this is kind of weird. All right. And then you got like in Deep Space Nine, If Wishes Were Horses, you got this leprechaun showing up and being all, it's like Rumpelstiltskin and kind of creepy. And then like in Voyager, you also have like episodes like Spirit Folk, where they have a hologram, a constantly running a holodeck program of a small town in Ireland.
That's true. That's a continuing. Yeah, that shows up 3 or 4 times throughout Voyager.
Yes, I think this is one in particular is the maybe the last of those, and it's sort of interesting because it's it's one of those the holodeck breaks down sort of scenarios.
Yes.
Where it's like, oh no, they're now aware that they're all in holodeck. Oh dear. Now they're going to be all like pitchforks and torches and being angry and Irish stereotype angry about this whole witchcraft business.
Yeah, the holograms became self-aware again.
Oh no, not again. But with Riley and his singing and it's like all your problems is you're not Irish sort of stuff. Sure, there's context for why he's saying this in the episode, but it's still sort of kind of cringy. Especially when you sort of contrast that with Sulu's reaction to the virus, where he's like, well, he's obviously not like an English pirate of descent, but he's all about, I'm going to be the swashbuckling pirate with the rapier and going, aha, and stuff like that, which sort of implies that, it's sort of, we're in the future, everyone's sort of, can sort of adopt the cultural interests that they find attractive from the past and sort of, run with them as sort of one of their maybe core ideals. But not Riley, because he's Irish.
Yeah, that is true. They really, it was interesting that they didn't go with the obvious, like, give Sulu a katana sort of thing.
Which I think they actually offered Sulu that as an option, but he's like, nah, we're going to do something else.
Yeah, I think I didn't read that one, but that sounds right. But yeah, it is who on Star Trek hates the Irish so much?
I don't know. I read a couple things about where this might be coming from, but that only most of them sort of only really apply to the Roddenberry era, because then it would be sort of self-deprecation, because apparently some of his ancestry is from Ireland. But why in the Brennan Braga era?
Yeah, well, maybe it's just continuing on the tradition.
I guess. I don't know. I'm just kind of having a shrug here.
Yeah, well, we do have kind of weird thing with Irishness in this country. We
bit,
continually
yeah.
have that every St. Patrick's Day here with the parades and the like warnings of like drunken riots and what have you that seem fairly over exaggerated.
And I think it's been quite a while since there's been a proper riot on St. Patrick's Day, so I think we're gonna be okay.
Yeah, I think we're fine. Yeah, everyone can calm down a little bit.
It's like I know there's the stereotypes and there's the rowdiness and there is green rivers and things like that, but come on, people, chill.
Yeah, that's I hadn't actually put that one together in this episode.
But it's sort of one of those things like,
I kept
this is where it shows up.
wondering how we were supposed to know he was Irish before he starts doing that.
I don't know. Maybe different episode order, but does he show up at all again?
I think he has one other appearance.
All right.
But I believe it was later. I guess we'll see how they handle it then.
Let's find out if he was uncomfortably Irish then.
Yes.
Now, before we move on, I would like to also contrast this with the character O'Brien, Chief O'Brien, who is also an Irish character, but is kind of the a much more responsible picture of what that all sort of comes down to. It's like, yeah, I've got this heritage, I got a little bit of an accent going on, and I even sometimes sing drinking tunes, but it's not like kind of painfully like deprecating. And it's like, yeah, okay, this is like an actual character who's much more fleshed out, much more real, and, not this kind of ridiculous, over the top, okay, I'm being kind of annoying with it sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the most Irish thing he does on either Next Generation or Deep Space Nine is say that he likes potatoes.
Yeah.
But I like potatoes.
Yeah,
so,
potatoes are cool, man. Come on.
Ah. So yeah, at least they got a little bit better with their weird stereotyping. I feel like that's a phrase we've said a lot.
It's like Star Trek, you were trying so hard, but still took you a while, kind of. So I got two more quick items.
All right.
All right. Poor practices and poor engineering. We've already talked about Joe taking off his glove.
Yes.
But also the fact that a out of his mind kind of semi-drunk guy was able to reroute all the main controls of the entire ship to engineering without anyone noticing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like a very case of bad engineering. So I'm going to start our award system off by saying this episode gets the bad engineering award. My other award I want to give out today is do the time warp again, because we have time travel for the first time in Star Trek. Woo!
Time travel. We go back 3 days, entire days. Stupid executive interference.
I could talk at length about time travel in Star Trek, but that might be better for a different episode. But I do have some extensive thoughts on that, but I don't want to be wasting too much more airtime.
Well, we are going to hit time travel at least 5 times in the original series run.
Alone.
Yes.
And when you get to the movies, there's also time travel there, and Next Generation happens every other week, it seems like sometimes. Mm-hmm. So we got plenty of opportunities.
Yep. Voyager had 6 or 7. Deep Space Nine had 3 or 4. Yeah, time travel's just a thing they do.
It's like, okay, I'm going to get the orb of time again and do a thing. Well, you could destroy our entire present. Could you not? No, I'm going to do it. Okay.
Well, they seem to be working off of some version of a self-correcting history.
And for the most part, that seems to work out, unless you have a Kelvin timeline situation.
Yeah.
But I will like to point out, for this particular episode, the time travel is kind of interesting, because it's not an instant flash, you're sometime in the distant past or future.
That is true. They are physically traveling.
Yes, it's like, okay, our engines are running, we're moving through space and time. And we can only go back in time as long as we're willing to wait. Effectively, sure, it's at an increased rate, so a few minutes becomes a few days, but if you want to go back years, you still have to wait a while before you can get that far back.
True, it is sort of an interesting one of like actually having to perform some sort of near physical motion.
Exactly, and in this way, it also kind of reminds me that this is not a very common trope in time travel stories in general. Sure, you kind of have it like Doctor Who, the TARDIS is kind of going for a while before it gets to its destinations, but that's kind of up in the air if that's even necessary to a degree. But a more, I guess, easily connected instance would be the Futurama episode, The Late Philip J. Fry, where they have a time machine that only goes forward in time, but you actually have to sort of wait for the future to come. You have a sort of a time machine-esque, like the classic story, dial where you turn it and you move forward in time at a certain rate, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, which I think that was the first time that was done in the original Time Machine movie.
Yes.
Though it's an interesting one if you actually think about it, because you get into some weird relativistic physics that I don't know how to comment on. But you kind of get this thing as a being that does not normally move through time except as the natural, whatever our natural, temporal progression is. Like, could you even register a movement in time as a length of time?
Well, I could write out some mathematics for you if you like, but that's that movement through time is all about the special and general relativity sort of craziness is all about.
Yes.
But I'll spare you guys the math this time.
Though since this is a little bit after World War II, relativity was actually kind of newer.
Yeah, it's pretty new. It's not necessarily well understood outside the realm of physics. It's like, okay, you got this Einstein guy, and somehow his stuff about space-time equates to atomic bombs? What?
Yeah, though I guess this idea of space and time being more physical entities is kind of a newer concept.
This linked nature to them, that they are intrinsically related to each other, and that relation is affected by both your relative velocity towards the observer who's doing the measurements, as well as the physical geometry of space-time itself, in which you in the area of space and time that you are, which is then affected by matter. So it's sort of how fast you're going and who you're nearby.
Well, you kind of hit it with the just the way that they do kind of the engines and stuff. There's a few books that I like from this era that deal a lot with relativistic time for if you're moving fast enough in your ship, then your personal time is moving so much slower than the one on Earth. How on Earth do you even communicate or do anything else?
Well, the first thing you need to adjust for is the fact that electromagnetic waves start acting all kind of weird. You got Doppler effects and things like that going on. It's not a radio wave anymore.
The one that I'm thinking of specifically involved telepathic identical twins, so they didn't really have to deal with radio waves.
Oh yes, that's the twin paradox that's usually called.
Yes.
Which by the way, the math doesn't quite work out as far as a return trip sort of situation. But yeah.
Oh, well, they fixed that in this one. I won't go into too many of the details, but they fixed that. It's okay.
Good.
But just playing with relativistic physics like that was actually kind of introduced a few years ago.
Yeah, relative to Star Trek, that is.
Yes, and this I don't know. I don't know offhand, but the idea that you would need some sort of special kind of engine to be able to both travel faster than the light and not suffer time-breaking relativistic effects is fairly cutting edge.
Yes. It's well, this is how we know the universe to work. Now, how do we break the rules without causing all sorts of problems? That's a very good question.
Yeah, that's just a lot of the near future technology that they get on this show. It's well, this thing can't be done. Well, it can now because you thingamabob.
Yes. We have figured out a new break in physics, so we are just going to adjust the knobs and let it be.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you can't change the laws of physics.
Thank you, Scotty. We'll remember that the next time we break them. Anyway, I think that's all I got. So, you got anything else?
I just had my normal random fun facts.
Oh yeah.
Because it's always nice to end these on an up note.
Yeah.
Oh, this episode, I'll call this an up note. This is the only time in the original series that all three reoccurring female characters appear in the same episode.
Dang. Really?
Yes. This is the only time that Uhura, Chapel, and Rand are all in the same episode.
Good that they got at least one chance?
Yep. I guess. They didn't really interact with each other.
Yeah,
but,
not even the same room, I don't think.
Yeah, Uhura and Rand are often on the bridge together.
Yeah, but not Chapel.
No, not Chapel.
She's exiled to the medical bay.
And then you kind of mentioned this other one a teeny bit before, that George Takei was given swords. He didn't know anything about fencing, and he had to learn some very basic stuff kind of on set as he went. So he practiced on set in between shots, stabbing at crew members.
Which I believe got kind of annoying, right?
Yeah, the crew sent a representative to Roddenberry and says if they ever gave Sulu a sword again, they would quit.
Understandable.
Yes.
I think that's quite reasonable.
I think that was about it. We had the shower curtain hazmat suits.
Yes. I also read that Spock's scanner on the planet was like actually a radiation survey meter.
Oh, it did look a little familiar.
It's like, oh yeah, I guess that's kind of the input. You have the magnetic coils there and all that fun stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the only fun facts for this one. There weren't alternate names or anything interesting, except for the fact that it was supposed to like transfer into Tomorrow is Yesterday.
Aborted two-parter situation.
Yes.
I also, spotted somewhere that this episode may have been the inspiration for a Red Dwarf episode called Back to Reality, which is one of my favorites.
Huh.
But, if we ever do Red Dwarf, I could talk about it then.
I hope that we will eventually.
Yes.
Depends how long we wind up doing this show. We'll be old by that point.
We'll be 1,000 years old, and then we'll have 1,000 more sci-fi series to cover at that point.
Yes. So,
we'll have to live forever.
That is it for the Naked Time.
Naked Time.
Next week we have The Enemy Within.
The Enemy Within?
Yes. Are you very familiar with The Enemy Within?
Well, I think it involves being beside yourself.
Yes. All I remember is Shatner chewing the scenery and mugging at the camera.
Good times. Sounds like it's gonna be fun.
Yes, perhaps not intellectually stimulating.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, we have a horrible transporter accident.
This is Gepwin recording from kind of the future. When we did this episode, neither of us had actually seen The Enemy Within, which is the next episode we're going to be covering here. And now having seen it, I felt like I should come back and maybe just record a little thing to let anyone who's watching along or maybe hasn't seen the original series before or in a while, that the next episode has a fairly upsetting and realistic sexual assault scene fairly near the beginning, and the rest of the episode really doesn't handle the content all that well. I just felt like I should come back and give anyone who's watching along with us a little bit of a heads up so you aren't going into it cold.
You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and on Twitter at Gepwin, spelled Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix, spelled DRIZIXS, and Twitter at IsixLP. Music is Waveform by DRKRN and Maury's Principle by the same. If you enjoyed our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more, and share the experience with your friends, families, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, the you that is will no longer exist.